Do you want to be the Reaper of Death popping in and out of the shadows at will? Do you want to add a build to your arsenal that features insane damage output, incredible survivability, and a personal threadling army at your disposal? If so, then stick around for the spectacular Strand Warlock build that is also plenty of fun to play. Before we jump in, I recently launched memberships for the channel, so if you enjoy my content and want to show some extra support while also getting some additional perks shown on screen, consider becoming a member of the channel. Any additional support would mean the world to me. So with that out of the way, let's hop right into the video. The focal point for this build is centered around our first aspect, Weave Walk, which allows us to air dodge to slowly consume our melee energy and enter the weave. While in the weave, we gain a crazy 90% damage resistance from all enemies. In PvE, it actually counts as invisibility, so enemies will just straight up ignore you while you're in the weave. However, while in the weave, you cannot shoot, switch weapons, pick up orbs, practically nothing except walk and jump. We will also generate threadlings over time while in the weave up to a maximum of 5, which we can then instantly summon with our second aspect, Weaver's Call. Weaver's Call allows us to cast our Rift to generate 3 additional threadlings along with deploying any threadlings that we have perched. Before we continue with the video, if you learned anything new, consider dropping a like and subscribing to the channel if you like what you see so far for more Destiny 2 guides just like this one. So needless to say, these aspects synergize with each other perfectly, as you can go into the weave, perch some threadlings, and then use your class ability to exit. You'll also summon your threadling army to wreak havoc on your enemies that will do exceptional damage via our first fragment, which is the Thread of Evolution. Thread of Evolution grants our threadlings the ability to travel 30% farther and faster, and on top of that, they will do an extra 53% damage against minor enemies and elites, and 33% extra damage against bosses or mini-bosses. Our little minion army will also help feed into our second fragment, the Thread of Generation, which helps us to get our threadling grenade energy back upon dealing damage from any source. Our last fragment, Thread of Fury, pairs extremely well with our exotic armor piece for this build, which is the Swarmers. Swarmers spawn 2 threadlings whenever we destroy a tangle, plus they grant our threadlings the ability to unravel targets that they damage. Defeating an unraveled target then spawns us a tangle that we can then use to keep activating Thread of Fury, which grants us melee energy when we damage targets with tangles. This incredible synergy helps us tremendously in the survivability department to keep entering the weave with more melee energy at our disposal. Our weapon choices for this build are actually quite vast, and you can really switch up weapons based on the activity that you're running. But of course, any strand weapons here are going to pair extremely well with this build. My favorite weapon to use is the Quicksilver Storm because of the added functionality with the Catalyst. It converts the weapon to strand and makes tangles for us when we get final blows with the grenade launcher version of this weapon. And the more opportunities we have to make ourselves tangles, the better, so that we can keep our melee energy up via Thread of Fury to activate Weave Walk. You can also run Wishkeeper with Hatchling for extra ways to make yourself threadlings and tangles, plus the added suspend utility from Snare Weaver is really nice for those unstoppable champions. And if you need anti-barrier in Season 23, you can even run the Final Warning. Plus, you'll also unravel targets and make yourself a tangle when you hit an enemy with a fully charged burst. The rest of the weapons within your loadout are up to you based on the activity you're running, but again, any weapon with Hatchling is a great choice for this build. Moving on to our mods, starting on the helmet, we want to run a Harmonic Siphon to make orbs for ourselves with our strand weapons. We're also going to use 1 copy of Ashes to Assets for extra super energy on our threadling grenade kills. To round out the helmet, you can slot in a copy of Powerful Friends to give teammates an armor charge when we pick up orbs. On our arms, we're going to use a Bolstering Detonation and a Momentum Transfer to get melee and class ability energy back when we deal damage with a grenade. We also want to use Firepower to give us another way to make orbs for ourselves via grenade kills. For the chest piece, nothing special is needed. You can just throw on any resistances you need based on the activity that you're running. Heading over to the legs, we definitely want to slap on a recuperation mod to gain health back whenever we pick up an orb for extra survivability, an invigoration mod to gain melee energy upon orb pickup, and 1 strand surge to give our strand weapons a 10% damage buff. Lastly, for our class item, we want to have one bomber, an outreach, and a powerful attraction to reduce our grenade and melee cooldown when we cast our rift, while also picking up any orbs around us. For the stat mods, I would recommend prioritizing in resilience, discipline, and recovery in that order. And then whatever is left over, if you can put it into strength. We thankfully don't need high strength to make this build work, since we aren't really going to be using our melee for anything except for going into the weave. And thanks to Thread of Fury and the rest of our mods, we will have plenty of ways to quickly regenerate melee energy. Our artifact perks aren't extremely essential for this build to work. However, in Season 23, there is Unraveling Orbs and Horde Shuttle that we can use to give us unraveling rounds whenever we pick up an orb, and to spawn a threadling when damaging an unraveled target. One of the best things about this build is how versatile it is. This build can even work really well with the Wanderer instead of Weaver's Call, especially if you're in endgame activities with unstoppable champions. With my Wanderer variation, I like to run Shackle Grenades instead of Threadling Nades so that we can suspend enemies via our grenade and any tangles that we throw. The only thing we're missing out on by using the Wanderer is the ability to deploy our perched Threadlings all at once. Instead, they will just slowly deploy one by one as we deal damage, but honestly, it is not the end of the world at all. With this variation, there are also going to be a couple different mods since we're using Shackle Grenades instead of Threadling Grenades. Shackle Grenades are really just for the suspend utility, so we won't really be getting that many kills with them. So instead of Ashes to Assets, I like to use either a Dynamo mod or a Heavy Ammo Finder on the helmet. On the arms, I swap out the Firepower mod with another momentum transfer for a little extra melee energy when we suspend enemies with our Shackle Grenades. And on the class item, I like to use a Reaper mod instead of the Outreach just to have another method of making orbs for myself. So now that you have your build set up, let's go over how to use them. So with our Weaver's Call variation, our basic rotation is going to be to just go into the weave via our air dodge to generate some perched threadlings, and then find a group of adds or any enemy really and just pop our rift right near them and watch our entire threadling army just absolutely destroy them there. You should get a tangle from those kills, and once you do, you can pick it up and again just keep throwing it at groups of enemies to proc Thread of Fury so that we can regenerate ourselves some melee energy. And again, the higher the tier of enemy that we hit with our tangle, the more energy that we will gain. So if you want to be a little selective about which enemies that you want to prioritize with your tangles, that is also a good thing to keep in mind. Overall, if you do have the melee energy to have some ample time in Weave Walk, you can play a little more aggressively. Just make sure that you don't get too out of position, and make sure you save like a little bit melee energy just in case you get in trouble like I did right there, so you can just safely reposition. But while you're in Weave Walk, you're basically going to be acting like an Invis Hunter, so none of the enemies will really pay attention to you. So if you want to move up and reposition that way to play a little bit more aggressively, you can feel free to do so. But just know if you go up too far and can't reposition back after you've put yourself in a bad position, then you might be SOL. Anytime that your tangle is on cooldown, aka when you can't make one for yourself again, just take notice that when it is off of cooldown, you can either throw a grenade to get some kills to make a tangle for yourself, or you can just pop your grenades on Quicksilver and shoot them real quick to then generate more tangles for yourself so you can keep proccing Thread of Fury. As you can see, we do have a ton of different ways to make ourselves tangles, so you can kind of just spam your abilities, except for our melee charges, which we want to be saving for when we want to go into the weave for that extra survivability. This should be needless to say, but if you need to chunk down a bigger enemy, obviously just cast your super and you'll do some crazy damage thanks to Thread of Evolution. If you get in trouble, pop Weave Walk, come out, pop your rift, let your threadlings go to work. If you don't have any melee charges, that's fine. Just use one of your tangles that you've made for yourself, pick it up and throw it at an enemy. And it's kind of just rinse and repeat from there. Just make sure that you are paying attention to your melee charges when you are going in and out of the weave. You don't want to be mismanaging them and then leaving yourself out to dry so that you can't go back into Weave Walk and get that survivability and or reposition that way. For the Wanderer variation, it is basically the same premise, except we don't have Weaver's Call to pop all of our threadlings all at once, which is fine. We're just going to have to do damage slowly over time so that they can come out one by one and do damage for us. At the same time, we basically are just going to be using our shackle grenade to suspend and stun unstoppable champions like so. Anytime we don't have our shackle grenade, we do want to be saving our tangles as well so that we can suspend some of our targets that we need to stun and perhaps just deal with more easily. I feel like I'm going to take a little bit of damage there, so I am just going to safely reposition over here. There's an orange bar. Oh, that's the final boss, actually. There's a guy right on top of me, though, so I'm just going to suspend him real quick. And I did just generate another tangle from that. I'm going to suspend this barrier champ up there because he's annoying me, and I'm just going to burst him down with my rocket, so he's no longer a problem. Meanwhile, my threadlings are kind of going to work over there for me, dealing damage to these orange bars. Where's this boss? Here he is. He is kind of staggered right now, so I am going to pop my ult on him. It doesn't really matter because those threadlings will move to a target anyway, and I'm in a little bit of some trouble. So I'm going to safely reposition here with Weave Walk. Back up into some cover so I can kind of take these guys out. I don't have a tangle on me at the moment, but that is okay because I have my shackle grenade to stun this unstoppable champion. And he is gone. Just like that. One of my favorite things to do with this build is to finish off an enemy you can be in Weave Walk and just immediately pop your finisher. You'll come right out of it and finish the enemy, and you can just go right back into the weave, just safely reposition. Super fun mechanic to utilize. That's going to be it for me today, y'all. I hope you guys enjoyed these builds as much as I do. If you do, consider subscribing to the channel if you're part of the 98% not already subbed for more Destiny 2 tips, tricks, and guides. It is absolutely free and helps out the channel a ton. Also, huge shout out to my channel members here on screen. You guys are amazing and your support means the world to me. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.